Once upon a time in the village of Ubara, beauty was something everyone noticed, and no one was more beautiful than Amara. Her skin was smooth and dark like rich earth. Her eyes shone like stars, and her smile could melt even the coldest heart. She was the pride of the village, and everyone talked about her beauty. Women admired her, though many were secretly jealous, while men couldn't help but turn their heads whenever she passed by. Amara was married to Chima, a strong and proud man who loved her deeply, but had a dangerous flaw: his jealousy. While Chima was proud to have such a beautiful wife, he couldn't stand the way other men looked at her. His heart burned with jealousy every time he saw someone admire her. Instead of feeling blessed, he began to feel cursed. Chima's jealousy only grew worse with time. He often asked Amara about the men she spoke to, accusing her of flirting even when she was only being polite. Amara, who loved Chima and was always faithful to him, tried to reassure him, but nothing seemed to ease his mind. The more Chima questioned her, the more frustrated Amara became. She knew she had done nothing wrong, and she was tired of defending herself. One day, a group of women in the village who had always been jealous of Amara decided to spread a cruel rumor. They started whispering that Amara was not as faithful as she seemed. They said she was meeting other men in secret, and that her beauty was a tool she used to deceive everyone. The rumor spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the village. When Chima heard the rumors, his jealousy turned into rage. He didn't ask Amara if the rumors were true. He simply assumed the worst. That night when Amara came home, Chima confronted her. His eyes were filled with anger as he repeated the horrible things he had heard. Amara, shocked and hurt by the false accusations, tried to defend herself, insisting she was innocent, but Chima, blinded by his jealousy, refused to listen. The argument grew heated, and in his rage, Chima did something unforgivable. He grabbed a knife and, without thinking, slashed Amara's mouth. Amara screamed in pain as blood poured from the wound. Her once beautiful face was now scarred, her smile forever changed. Chima, realizing what he had done, stepped back in horror, but it was too late. The damage was done. The next morning, news of the attack spread through the village. Many of the women who had been jealous of Amara were secretly pleased. They felt that Amara, with her beauty, had finally been brought down to their level. Even some of the men who had always admired her felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, as their own wives were now more beautiful in comparison. For Amara, the pain was unbearable. Not just the physical pain, but the heartbreak of being betrayed by the man she loved. She had always been faithful, and now, because of lies and jealousy, her life was shattered. The woman who had been the pride of Ubara was now a broken, scarred figure. Amara knew she couldn't stay in the village, where everyone had turned against her. She needed to leave to find a way to regain her power and make those who wronged her pay. She decided to leave the village and seek out the one person who might help her, the old witch who lived deep in the dark forest. The villagers spoke of the witch in fearful tones, remembering the terrible magic she once wielded. Banished long ago for her dark practices, the witch lived in isolation far from prying eyes. One night, under the cover of darkness, Amara made her way into the forest. The journey was long and difficult, but Amara was driven by a powerful desire for revenge. She was determined to find the witch and gain the power she needed to make those who had wronged her pay dearly. After hours of walking through the dense forest, Amara finally arrived at a small, crooked hut hidden among the trees. The air was thick with the smell of herbs and smoke, and the sounds of the forest seemed to hush. As she approached, the door to the hut creaked open, and Amara stepped inside. Inside the hut, the old witch sat by a fire stirring a pot filled with strange ingredients. Her eyes were sharp and knowing, and she looked at Amara with a piercing gaze. The witch had been expecting her. "I see your pain," the witch said, her voice low and raspy. "You seek revenge, don't you?" Amara nodded, her heart filled with anger and determination. "I want the power to make them suffer, to take back what they stole from me." The witch smiled, her teeth yellowed and crooked. "Revenge comes with a price," she warned. "Are you willing to pay it?" Amara didn't hesitate. "I am," she said firmly. The witch stood and began to prepare a potion, mixing herbs and whispering ancient spells. The air in the hut grew heavy with magic, and Amara could feel a strange energy building around her. The witch handed Amara a cup filled with a dark, bubbling liquid. "Drink this and you will gain the power you desire," the witch said. "But remember, once you take this path, there is no turning back." Without a second thought, Amara drank the potion. As the liquid flowed down her throat, she felt a surge of energy and a burning sensation in her veins. Her scars tingled, and her anger seemed to solidify into something powerful and dark. The witch watched with satisfaction as Amara's eyes grew cold and her spirit transformed. "You now have the power to command the creatures of the earth," the witch said. "Use them wisely, and those who have wronged you will fall before you." Amara left the witch's hut feeling stronger than ever. She had the power she needed to take her revenge. Returning to Ubara, she was no longer the broken woman who had left. One morning, as Chima worked in the fields, he heard a rustling in the grass. Before he could react, a large venomous snake slithered out from the shadows, its eyes fixed on him. The snake struck quickly, biting Chima's leg with deadly precision. The poison spread through his body like fire. Chima fell to the ground, his strength fading fast. After killing Chima, Amara did not stop. Her heart was filled with darkness, and she was determined to bring suffering to everyone who had celebrated her downfall. The villagers were unaware of what had happened to Chima. They assumed he had been bitten by a snake while working in the fields, a tragedy that was not uncommon, but Amara knew better. As the days passed, strange things began to happen in the village. Cattle that had been healthy the day before were found dead in their pens, their bodies twisted and swollen. Crops that had been growing strong suddenly withered and died. The villagers whispered among themselves, wondering what could be causing these misfortunes, but no one suspected Amara. Amara, now living on the outskirts of the village, watched with satisfaction as fear began to spread. Her power grew stronger with each passing day, and she used it to bring more suffering to the people of Ubara. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a young mother in the village gave birth to a baby boy. The child was beautiful with bright eyes and a strong cry, but that night as the mother slept with her baby in her arms, the child was taken from her. Amara had been waiting for this moment, using her newfound powers. She sent a dark shadow into the mother's home. The shadow moved silently, slipping into the room where the mother and baby slept in the darkness. The baby's cries were silenced as the shadow took him away. The next morning, the mother woke up to find her child gone. She screamed in terror, waking the entire village. The villagers rushed to her home, but there was no sign of the baby. Panic spread quickly, and soon everyone was on edge, fearing for their own children. The villagers searched high and low, but the baby was nowhere to be found. Days passed, and the hope of finding the child alive faded. Fear gripped the village, as more babies began to disappear in the night, and with each child she took, Amara grew stronger. The people lived in constant dread, wondering who would lose their child next. They prayed to the gods for mercy, but their prayers went unanswered. As Amara continued her campaign of terror, she began to steal something else from the villagers, the beauty of their women. Using her dark powers, she took the youth and beauty from every woman in the village, leaving them old and haggard overnight. The women's skin became wrinkled, their hair turned gray, and their strength faded. They could not understand what was happening to them, but Amara knew. She was taking back what they had stolen from her, the admiration and attention that had once been hers. The village of Ubara was now a place of fear and sorrow. As the days went by, the villagers began to grow desperate and they began to turn on each other. Some accused their neighbors of witchcraft, believing that someone among them was responsible for the curse. Amara's revenge had reached every corner of Ubara, but Amara was not yet satisfied. She kept remembering the day Chima had scarred her. The pain of his betrayal still fresh in her mind, and she remembered the villagers who had laughed and whispered behind her back, who had been happy to see her fall. Amara knew that there was one more thing she needed to do to complete her revenge. She needed to destroy the village itself, to wipe Ubara off the map so that no one would ever speak of it again. The thought filled her with a cold satisfaction, and she began to plan her final act of vengeance. She decided to move even closer to the villagers she despised, hiding her true intentions behind a mask of generosity. Amara set up a stall in the village market selling fresh meat to the people of Ubara. The villagers, who were struggling with hunger and fear, were drawn to her stall as if by an invisible force. The meat she sold was unlike anything they had tasted before. Tender, juicy, and full of flavor. The villagers were so charmed by the quality of the meat that they flocked to her stall every day, eager to buy from her. No one questioned where the meat came from, even though there was little game left in the nearby forests. Each night after the market closed and the villagers returned to their homes, Amara would choose her next victim. She would wait until they were alone, slipping through the shadows with her magic. Then she would strike, using her powers to kill them quickly and quietly. The victim would vanish without a trace, and by morning their flesh would be neatly prepared and ready to sell in the market. Amara took a twisted pleasure in knowing that the very people who had wronged her were unknowingly consuming the flesh of their friends and neighbors. It was her final act of revenge, a way to taint their souls just as they had tainted hers, and under the spell of her dark magic, the villagers were none the wiser. They ate greedily, praising Amara for her generosity, never realizing that they were feasting on the dead. As the days passed, the missing villagers became a topic of conversation. People whispered about the disappearances, wondering if the curse on their village had grown worse. But whenever someone tried to investigate, Amara's influence over them would cloud their minds. They would forget their suspicions and instead find themselves back at her stall buying more meat. The village elders who were supposed to protect the people were also caught in Amara's web. They, too, were drawn to her stall, unable to resist the allure of the meat she sold. Amara's magic had twisted their minds, making them blind to the truth. They would eat the meat with no thought of the lives that had been taken to provide it. Amara's power over Ubara was now complete. The villagers, once proud and strong, were reduced to desperate, hungry souls controlled by the very woman they had betrayed. Each time they bought her meat, they unknowingly sealed their fate, becoming part of the cycle of death that Amara had created. Amara stood at the center of it all, watching with cold satisfaction as her revenge played out exactly as she had planned. She was the butcher of Ubara, and the village's fate was in her hands. Soon she had become reckless, believing she was invincible, but her magic had its limits. One day, Amara made a grave mistake. In her hunger for even more power, she tried to cast a spell that would make her control over the villagers permanent. She wanted to make sure that no one could ever defy her, that her reign of terror would never end. But as she performed the ritual, something went wrong. The spell backfired, and in an instant, Amara felt her power begin to slip away. The villagers, who had been under her spell for so long, suddenly began to wake up. Their minds cleared, and they remembered everything. The missing people, the strange meat, and the terror that had gripped their lives. Anger and fear filled their hearts as they realized that Amara had been behind it. All the charm that had kept them blind to her actions was gone, and the villagers were ready to take their revenge. Amara, feeling her power fading, knew she was in danger. Desperate, she ran to the old woman in the forest, the witch who had given her these dark powers in the first place. But when Amara arrived at the old woman's hut, she found only silence. The old woman was dead, her body cold and lifeless. Without her, there was no one to restore Amara's magic, no one to help her. Panic gripped Amara's heart. She fled immediately from the witch's home, running as fast as she could. She didn't know where she was going. She just wanted to get away before the villagers found her. But as she ran, she kept looking over her shoulder, terrified that they were right behind her. In her fear, Amara didn't see the small, deep river ahead of her. The water was dark and fast, hidden by the thick trees around it. She stumbled, trying to keep her balance, but it was too late. Amara slipped and fell into the river, the cold water pulling her under before she could scream for help. The river was strong and Amara couldn't fight it. The water dragged her down, and within moments she was gone, swallowed by the depths. Her life ended just as quickly as her power had faded, leaving nothing behind but the dark memories of the village she had once controlled. When the villagers arrived at Amara's home, they found it empty. The woman who had caused so much pain was gone, her hold on them broken. There was relief, but also sadness and anger for all they had lost. The village of Ubara slowly began to heal, but the scars of Amara's curse would never fully fade.